Hey folks, Pete from Hammer Cycle Service here. Today is February 23rd, 2026, and I am out working in the van. I'm going to be starting to work on this Otso Vorakantai. This bike needs a good washing, so I'm going to do a bike wash today, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This bike gets ridden. It needs some washing. Pretty messy, pretty dirty, but that's okay. That's what they're meant for. They're meant for being ridden. And I actually kind of like washing bikes, so it's kind of fun for me. So the way I got like this process, right? This whole system for how I wash bikes. Using different cleaners. My primary cleaner is just Dawn dish soap and water in a bucket. So that's what this is. I like the Dawn dish soap and water to get the big chunks and the bulk of the dirt off of there. I use Dawn dish soap and water on disc brakes if they've got any oil on them and they're squealing, if the pads and rotors are contaminated with oil. Getting some Dawn dish soap and water on the pads and rotors and you take it for a ride heats up and tends to pull the oils out. And that's one of the things I found that is pretty good for just decontaminating brake pads and rotors that have oil in them. So the Dawn dish soap and water, I feel like since it's good for disc brakes, might as well use it. It's going to be less expensive. The one thing I don't like, so I use this Maxima Bio Wash. This stuff is good. It's got surfactants, which, and other than what it sounds like, I don't actually know what that means. But I find that these bike cleaners with surfactants tend to break up the oils better, so they seem to be having a mild degreasing effect. But if I just start spraying the bike, I'd say like 30% gets on the bike and the rest of it's just going into the air. And it's expensive stuff. Dawn dish soap and water is not very expensive, so if I just take the brush and do this, I can get the bulk of it off, get that dirt out of there, and it doesn't cost a ton of money. And it does good things for the bike. Gets the oils off of the brake pads and rotors. And this is just a good way to apply some soapy water. Obviously in the van I don't have a water hose. I just can't use a garden hose. So this method works really well. You can see I got this tray underneath to capture the water. That way it doesn't make as big of a mess on the floor of the van. I have these Park Tool scrub brushes that I like. These ones work really well. And so the water and the soap's just going to kind of start softening up some of this dirt on here. One of the things I don't want to do is start out by simply spraying the bike and then coming by with a rag, because all that sand and grit and dirt is just going to be scuffing up the surface. In this case, it would dull the finish. On a painted bike, it would potentially damage the paint. And so by using water and just letting it flow, it's pulling that dirt off of the bike and not damaging the finish as much as if you just started rubbing on it with a rag and some soapy water. So this is kind of like phase one. I'm just getting the bulk, the chunks most of the loose stuff, loosening up what's on there, letting it soak in and kind of make the stuff that was hard and caked on a little bit easier to remove when I move on to phase 2. And then what doesn't come off, I'll come back and use something a little bit stronger, more of a degreaser if necessary. But this is efficient, it's inexpensive, and I think a lot better for the bike. Nice touch. You can always wash up the tires. The bikes look so much better when the tires are clean. Being able to rotate the bike in the stand is helpful to get underneath, get to things you couldn't see otherwise. Get into the backside of the crank. Underneath the down tube, back of the fork. And then I have smaller, more detailing brushes. This one's good for getting like between the rotor and the spokes. A little bit tighter spots in the frame, on the wheel. In between this chainstay yoke. In here around the bottom bracket. All right. The other thing, I don't like using a hose to wash bikes. I know everyone knows not to use a power washer, but even a hose with like the sprayer for your garden, or like from a shower, one of those kind of shower heads that have a hose that you can spray it off. I remember working in the shop and we'd be doing overhauls, and we would take the bikes to a bike shower. And I remember walking them back, washing them off, being careful. It wasn't a problem because we were overhauling it, but you'd wash it, and then as I'd come back to the bench, I'd be holding the handlebars up and rolling it on the rear wheel, and I would hear the sand and the grit in the headset. And that I didn't hear it on the way there, but I heard it on the way back. And then you're doing the overhaul, so you take the fork off and you overhaul the bearings, and I would see water in there. And so it definitely, anytime you spray water, even just dripping water on it, has potential to get into places where you don't want it, and it's probably taking that dirt in there with it. So now on the other hand, if you ride your bike and get it dirty, that's just the nature of the beast. You're going to have to wash it or just leave it dirty. It just means you have to do maintenance more frequently. You're going to have to get into those bearings more often than if the bike didn't get dirty or wet. But biking, what can you do? Not much fun going out and always staying clean. All right. So now, oops, getting hung up, tight in here. I'm gonna drop the wheels. This will allow me to clean inside the frame better, as well as get the wheels cleaner. There we go. Jeez. So obviously I couldn't access the underside of this fork as well when the wheel was in there. I couldn't get to this brake caliper as well. Anyway, I find this satisfying. Probably a little weird to think about, but always feels good to take a dirty bike and make it clean. So down here around the bottom bracket area, there's some pretty thick, gooey stuff that I'm not, just not breaking up from the dish soap and water. It's not breaking down. It seems like oil and dirt combined, which Dawn dish soap doesn't really break down like the grease from bikes all that well. It's good for light oils and stuff. So the areas where it's pretty heavy, where I'm not having any luck breaking stuff down, Dawn dish soap. I'm going to use this Maxima Bio Wash. I sprayed a little bit in these areas earlier. But it did not totally break it down. I'm going to spray it, let it sit for a little bit. Here I can get this cassette and kind of see all that dirt built up around that lock ring and stuff. And for one thing I'll say with this Maxima, when I spray this, breathe it in, it makes me cough. I know that's probably the surfactants. I think every time I get one of those cleaners with surfactants that works well, I also notice that makes me cough when I spray it. So I don't want to do that. Don't want to breathe it in if I don't have to. This is what's called a scratch brush. I get them at Northern Tool. I just like that these nice deep bristles work well on cassettes. Okay, so on this bike, I'm going to be doing a tune-up plus where I do remove and clean the drivetrain. For one, I just wanted to kind of do a video on bike washing, so I'm doing it this way. But also, it's good to start the washing process. I was going to wash the bike anyway, so it doesn't hurt to start washing the drivetrain. Now, when I'm using the rag, I'm getting rid of this kind of oily coated thing going on here. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's kind of gooey. I think it's the chain lube. So, again, trying to get the bulk of this stuff off without harsh chemicals and degreasers. Yeah, that's the chain lube. It's just tracking everything. I try to avoid spraying the bike with degreaser. Again, because like I was saying earlier, it's going to make its way in to areas where we don't want it, into the bearings and whatnot. But the other thing, the reason why I like doing a thorough bike wash like this is it allows me to do a thorough inspection. As I'm cleaning it up, I'm looking for potentially cracks at the welds, cracks at the rims, at the spoke holes on the rims. I already measured this chain for wear, but looking at chain ring, seeing if it's worn out, kind of taking notes here of what I see and what I'm going to need to do to the bike, kind of making a checklist. And here I feel like most of the dirt is kind of dripped away and been pulled away. So I don't feel so bad using the rag at this point to wipe the frame down. Because I don't think I'm going to be scratching and scuffing the surface when I have dirt between the rag. This chain was clean. If it was really dirty, I'd use the Park Tool CM 5.3, put some degreaser in there and scrub it up. Again, this one's drivetrain is going in the solvent tank, so it's not necessary. But if I wasn't doing that or didn't have time, or if it was in the field right before an event or something, I could get the chain real clean with that Park Tool CM 5.3, get it lubed up, ready to go. Okay. I'm getting there. Still pretty dirty on this derailleur. That's going to take some stronger degreaser. This one I found works pretty good. Maxima degreaser component cleaner for strength. Gonna spray that. This I'm not going to get on the caliper. I just want this on the derailleur. And then still got a little greasy dirt up here that's not breaking down. So I'm going to hit that and then give it some time. Let it sit. Trying to hit the cassette a little bit without getting it on the rotor. But I don't know how that's going to affect it. Here's some stuff you can kind of see. It's not very good light there, but this is that. I was coating this. Just a thick coating. If it was like a wax lubricant, I'd hope it wouldn't collect dirt, but this stuff is just collecting the dirt. You know what I'm going to do? Take this rotor off. Because I want to get the degreaser all over this back wheel here. I don't want to get it on the rotor. Okay. Now I can degrease it better. Take this front one off while I'm at it. So now coming back to this derailleur. Sprayed it with degreaser earlier. And now it's really starting to come off and get clean. Got some grass in the pulleys. Oh, you can see that. So that Maxima degreaser is really doing the job here, really breaking down whatever is on this derailleur. It's just gooey, super gooey. Okay, there. I'm liking that. That's working good. making progress. This is nice. I really do find having a lot of brush options is key. Just gonna get some warm, soapy water on this derailleur, just kind of really soften up this goo and let it melt away. One of the areas I really like to get is the seat color here. Yeah. Want that little bit of dirt and grit. Oh, it looks a lot nicer. Okay. So that's pretty good as far as getting off the dirt and the grit. Okay, so now that I got the bike pretty well scrubbed up, I got my spray bottle. I use this thing, it's just for spraying pesticides in the garden, some glyphosates and whatnot. I just have fresh water in it, and so now I can spray, and all that soapy water, all the cleaners and the chemicals, and the remaining dirt and grit is going to be rinsed away, just washed off, rather than scratching it into the frame, rather than leaving soapy residue or degreaser residue. Obviously this doesn't have a lot of pressure, it's just kind of a manual hand pump to pressurize it, and then just a little bit of a mist coming out the nozzle here. So I don't think that's any more pressure than maybe some rain, riding in the rain. Not much more than just letting the water drip over the bike. And then for the final detailing, I can come back now with a rag and really get at it to get everything real super clean. Now for the wheels. But yeah, for doing this as a mobile mechanic, you got to figure out ways to make it work. Obviously doing this like outside in the backyard or in a bike shower, the garden hose might go a little faster, but I think the end result with this is just as good, if not better. And again, I like to do my own bike washes. At the shops, we'd always talk about getting a intern or a first year mechanic to do the washing for us to save time, but I feel like you learn so much. If these tires had any leaks in them, I could see bubbles coming out, and I'd know if I have a leaking tire or anything like that. I can look for, again, cracked rims, cracked hubs, whatnot. And you really kind of get to know the bike this way. So that's pretty much it. I'll see if I can get the camera. Oh, yeah, that's annoying. There we go. So now, not perfect. I still got some grit in here, a little bit down in there. Again, this drivetrain, this needs to come off and go in a solvent tank. But again, if I was at an event, or if the customer didn't want to pay for the level 2 tune-up plus, I could get it pretty darn clean like this. You know, again, that chain nowhere near perfect. But in this case, we're going to be cleaning it up in the solvent tank, and you know, again, you can still see some grit here, but I'll get that rinsed off. So there it is, washing the Atso working tie.